Stop comparing, start creating. Overcoming crippling inferiority as an artist. Hey everyone, it's Tim, and welcome back to the Saga Podcast. Today, we're diving into a topic that hits every creative person sooner or later. Crippling inferiority. You know, that gut punch feeling when you look at other artists' amazing work and suddenly feel like you'll never measure up. Yeah, we're talking about that. So we'll chat about those feelings and where they come from, why they can freeze us in our tracks, and how to break free and keep creating. Let's get to it. So let's talk about inspiration versus comparison. Inspiration it's a beautiful and natural thing. Every artist needs to be inspired, and it's not a conscious thing. It's a thing that strikes you. It happens when we surround ourselves with things we like, go to places that we feel at home at. It could hit us like a ton of bricks just out randomly somewhere, and you just never know when that inspiration is going to strike. So we see the world differently from most people. We notice shapes, colors, textures, patterns, and other details that people might overlook. And that's powerful, because inspiration fuels our growth and pushes us to improve. But here's where it goes a little sideways. So inferiority creeps in when we start comparing ourselves to other artists. So if you've ever compared yourself to another artist, you'll probably know where I'm going with this. And it becomes crippling inferiority when we get so overwhelmed by the incredible art out there that we can't move forward. We get stuck, convinced that nothing we create will ever be good enough. Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever created something, looked at an artist online and thought, I will never be as good as them? It's a terrifying thought. But I don't think I've ever met an artist that hasn't felt that. At least at some point in their artistic career, their time. It's almost impossible to ignore. We are surrounded by media. We are surrounded by things just everywhere. Social, magazines, TVs, animation, movies, shows, it doesn't matter. It's out there. There's so much of it. And now with AI generating images, crippling inferiority is almost an instant overwhelming emotion that can come on extremely fast. I've been noticing it lately. Some of the inspiration sites that I go to now are being flooded with AI images being just mass produced. And we're going to get into that in just a little bit. So we get stuck and we convince ourselves that nothing we create could ever be good enough. And that's a problem. We have to be able to move on from this. So I have an analogy for you. So there's a quote that I love. And though I cannot remember who said it, this is the general idea. A flower doesn't concern itself with flowers around it. It just blooms. You may have heard this at some point in your life. And it almost sounds kind of corny, but it's true, and for artists especially. Every flower blooms differently. We're all creative, and we're all beautiful in unique ways. I cannot draw exactly as you can. We may have different strengths and weaknesses. We may specialize in something that the other does not. We might have more experience doing something than the other. We might surround ourselves with different inspiration. There's so many different things, and it is infinite possibilities between artists. But, sometimes that's easier said than done. We tend to fall into this comparison trap. So let's be real. Who hasn't scrolled through Pinterest, through Instagram, through DeviantArt, Wattpad, ArtStation, etc., looking at all the incredible work that's out there and thought, I'm nowhere near this good. If you've never felt that, props to you. I mean, seriously, props to you. But I'll admit it, I've been there countless times. Those thoughts tend to seep in almost daily. So I constantly wrestle with thoughts like, my work isn't as good as theirs. My ideas aren't as original as theirs. Why am I even trying? I'll never build an audience when artists like that exist. Those are thoughts that run through my mind all the time. And I'm sure there's others. Those are just the ones I remember. But have you ever felt that way? Because I'd be willing to bet that most artists have. And it's a trap. We should not compare. Can you compare Monet to Picasso? No, you can't. Not saying that we're all going to be as famous, but we all have what makes our work unique. It might be similar to somebody else, or they might have similar content, but there's no good reason to compare yourself to somebody else. And I've learned this the hard way. I lost years upon years of art practice because I refused to draw, knowing that there were so many other artists out there producing so much better work. In my opinion, better work. There was a time where I quit drawing for almost 8 years. When I came back, convinced myself to come back and start drawing again, I had to start over. A few things would come here and there, I'd be reminded of a few things, a few styles that I used to do, some influences that helped me along the way, but basically starting over. And that was a long journey to get back. So we got to know our limits and our strengths. This helps circumvent this comparison trap. So a lot of crippling inferiority. That's going to be the phrase of the day. Crippling inferiority ties back to self-esteem and confidence. Two things that could possibly scare every artist. So one lesson I've learned from working in the design world for so long is that nobody can be amazing at everything. Learn this. And it might save you some years of trying to figure this out. Nobody can be amazing at everything, as much as we try. But I've done a lot of things in my career. So currently, these are things that I do right now. I draw characters and stories and comics. I write stories. I've written scripts. I create comic panels and books. personally and professionally. I do graphic design. I do a ton of graphic design every single day. Front-end, back-end web development. I'm a PHP and MySQL developer. HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I deal with marketing automation, social media, all that stuff. It's like I lead a marketing department professionally, and I'm responsible to make sure all this content gets out. And I work with a team, so it's not just me. So I have to manage that as well. So a ton of hats. Here, take this hat off, put this one on. And all that makes me a good generalist. And I think I excel at the leadership portion of it. But sometimes I feel like I'm spread very thin. I'm juggling corporate websites, app development, creative direction, marketing, book design, and tons more. And because of that, I feel like I'm not exceptional at a few things. More like I'm good at a lot of things. And I say good very, very meekly here. We'll say adequate to good at a lot of things. And because of that, this is where my own inferiority creeps in. It's especially when I'm developing artwork. This is yet something I want to be really good at, but there's so many other things in the pantheon. I didn't even get into video development, video production, and post-production work, graphics packages. All that stuff is in my wheelhouse too. So all of that takes away from me being able to specialize in something that I really want. Crippling inferiority. Owning what you love. I'll be the first to admit that I am not the best artist on the planet. Not by a long shot. Not even close. I'd say adequate. Again, maybe good. I have an understanding. We'll say that. A lot to learn. A lifetime of learning. But I know where my passion lies. I love character design and character development. I want to know who these people are. Creating characters I'd want to know and meet and hang out with. Villains who are fascinating. Who have interesting motivations that are believable. Not just thrown out there by happenstance. Exploring inner monologues and emotional conflicts. One of my favorite concepts, and you may have heard this too, is a statement that says, a villain is the hero in their own story. And I take that to heart, because you have to remember that there are multiple perspectives depending on where you came from, how you were raised, what you surround yourself with, your biases, your influences, all this stuff, all your inspiration, all this stuff molds you into a character. And it's important to understand where all that comes from so you can write a character effectively. And I love drawing female characters. It's a funny thing. In my story, Legend of Nero, there are very few male characters in the spotlight. I just don't really care about them. I understand that they're probably necessary to advance the story, advance the plot, but I don't like to draw them. I find them boring. I'm much more interested in drawing a female form than a male form. And there's various reasons for that. Obviously, there's the physical attributes of a female, but also I enjoy drawing outfits, dynamic poses. I love hair. accessories, all this stuff that's interesting to me. It's just not the same for male characters. So as I've said before, it's important to admit to yourself what you love and lean into it. So like J. Scott Campbell, one of the influences that I mentioned in an earlier podcast, he says, I like to draw girls. And same here. I'm a heterosexual guy who loves drawing females. But not just as fan service. I want them to be interesting, complex, and compelling, and I think that I'm pretty decent at that. I don't draw them just for a male gaze, but I want them to be compelling. So let's swing back a little bit to inspiration versus overwhelm. When I scroll Pinterest and other platforms, I save things that catch my eye. I use it like you're supposed to use it. You build your boards, your inspiration boards, etc. I tend to look at poses. I'm big on poses. I love outfits, character aesthetics. I like seeing different ways of seeing different characters. I like seeing how people create some tutorials. Here's how I create eyes. Here's how I do coloring. Here's how I draw skin or color skin. All that stuff. I love looking at that stuff. And I use it for future references. And I believe that is normal and healthy. I'm sure a ton of artists do very similar things. But the danger lies when inspiration turns into intimidation. So this is kind of where AI images kind of slip in. You start seeing something and you think, how could I ever compete with this? And you have a point in that manner of thinking. So the more I look, the more I feel crushed. Because the algorithm that's in those social media apps, they're designed to make you engage with content that you engage with, right? So you see something you like, you look at it, you linger on it. They're even using heat mapping technology to see where your eyes go and how long they stay there, just so that they show you more of that stuff. And I tend to wonder what Amazon, what Pinterest, and what Instagram, what they think I am. If they were to try to classify me, how would they do it? Because I look at so many different things that it's just an amusing thought to see, Tim looks at outfits, he looks at hairstyles, he looks at fingernail designs, he looks at heels, he looks at he looks at stockings, he looks at corsets, he looks at underwear, he looks at Disney characters. It's amazing for me to think and wonder, if they were to create a profile of me, what would it look like? And my mind immediately goes to the camel analogy. What is a camel? Maybe you've heard this. It's a horse designed by a committee. And when you get so many opinions, original concepts just go out the door. So it's funny to think about. Maybe think about it next time you're scrolling through social and be like, if Amazon was a person, what would they think I am? Or if Pinterest could try to define me, what would it say? It's an amusing thought. You should check it out. So I tend to think like I'll never be good enough looking at this stuff. And if you're struggling with that too, I'm right there with you. And it's okay to admit it. I highly suggest admitting it to yourself, to somebody. So how do we break free? As we boil all this down, this is what I've learned. Recognize what's happening. We need to be aware of what we're consuming. When you feel overwhelmed, because you will get triggers, your body will give you triggers. When we're feeling overwhelmed and inferior, pause. Close your eyes, stop, turn off the phone, do something and acknowledge the feeling. Don't ignore it. Say something. Say, okay, I have to stop. Remind yourself, nobody's truly comparing you to others. It's so easy for us to get inside our heads and think that, oh my gosh, if I'm thinking that I'm comparing myself to somebody else may be comparing themselves to me. Or they may be comparing me to somebody else. If somebody is comparing your work unfairly, they're not appreciating what makes you unique. And unless they're providing constructive criticism, it is simply noise. Accept that you can't and you don't have to compete with AI. This was something I learned in wedding photography. Is that when you're in an industry and when you're trying to create something, the other wedding photographers, the other photographers in your area, they're not your competition. It's a mindset. They're not your competition because what you are, what you bring to the table is not the same as what somebody else will bring. Period. It's that simple, and it works for art as well. So you don't have to compete with AI. You don't have to compete with other artists. We'll talk about it in the future, but remember, AI isn't your competitor. Another artist isn't your competitor. It's not your enemy. But AI is a tool. Just like how Photoshop started out, it freaked everybody out. Now it's a natural thing for just about every graphic artist to use. It's a tool. So you have something that AI doesn't. Your human experience and your creativity. Bring yourself into your work. Someone else can't bring you into their work. Only you can do that. And focus on your own growth. Think about where you started and how far you've come. I had to do this recently. I went back on a post on legendofnero.com, and when I created this post, I went back and looked at my very first artwork of Adriana, my very first character, my first original character that I created when I was 16 years old. That was 1996, people. I was 16 years old and already making my first character. I was ready to put her out in the world. I had no idea what I was going to do with her. I just know that this is mine. This is my character. This is my creation. And I want her to do something awesome. But I went back and looked at that artwork compared to how I design her now. It's like night and day. It looks like it was done by a completely different person. And it humbled me. I had so much love and interest for her even back then, and bringing that to a new design just invigorates me. I love it. So the mere fact that you picked up a pencil, a stylus, a mouse, whatever, and started creating is huge. That decision alone sets you apart. So going forward, let's not compare our bloom. Remember, a flower doesn't look to its neighbor for the intensity of the bloom. It just blooms. There is no comparison. So when you feel overwhelmed, stop scrolling. Just acknowledge it. Stop scrolling. Turn it off. Do something else. Step back. Find the things that make you happy. You surround yourself with inspiration every day. Find it. Go to it. remind yourself why you do what you do. And then recreate with why you create. It's something that I'm trying to do more in my personal life. Even if it's just for 5 minutes. Because as long as you can keep moving forward, you're not moving backward. So I want to thank you for hanging out with me today. Remember, you're blooming at your own pace, and that's exactly how it should be. So this is Tim, and I've been your host for the Saga Podcast. I'll catch you on the next one. Tim out.